Good evening, everybody. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast on a Monday evening. I'm losing track of time because it's Labor Day here. But welcome to the weekly Calamity Jane live stream. James, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing just dandy, and how are you?
Well, I wish I had a beard, but that will come in due
Yeah, this is
time.
a new look for you because of your
Temporary.
uh because you're a what kind of an actor would you consider yourself if you're the type that needs you're a method actor, is that what it is?
Method
Or
actor? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't
yeah.
say that. I don't know that actor is the right term that I would use. Phony, fraud. Those are all great words. If anything,
Yeah.
I think improviser is probably the most accurate. But this wasn't for a show, actually. This was a major convention in Atlanta every Labor Day weekend, and it just so happens that it's Labor Day weekend. And hence 60,000 geeks, nerds, and otherwise descend upon the city of Atlanta, myself included, for 4 days of costuming and debauchery.
Hmm.
So that was my Saturday. Sorry, I'm putting my dog on the ground. I only went on Saturday, but a friend of mine and I did a couple of costumes. If you're familiar with the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, and if you've seen the stream, then you most certainly are, because I have spoken at length about it. My friend went as Jobu Tupaki when she was in the Elvis costume with the purple hair, and her son has like a pig's plushie, so she walked around with a pig plushie the whole night.
That's
And
funny.
I went as Deirdre Beaudeirdre, Jamie Lee
Hmm.
Curtis's character. So the beard had to go, otherwise it would look somewhat odd. Um, but the costume was great. It turned out really well. Jen, I owe all of the credit to my friend Jen. She did all of the hard work. I was just grunt labor for it. But we bought these water balloons and filled them with water and then shoved them into a bra that I got from a friend of mine. So, I mean, the whole thing was very thorough. I mean, it was
Hmm.
very, very well done. I walked around slouched the whole time so I could force my gut out a little bit.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
it was commitment. It was true commitment, and it's interesting. I mean, I hesitate to use the word brave. Well, I don't. It's a stupid word to use for an actor. But Jamie Lee Curtis is a beautiful woman, and this is a really ugly character. And she did. It's just awesome to me when actors are willing, because actors are vain, shallow
Hmm.
creatures,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And they don't want to look bad on camera. So it's
But
always,
she went.
yeah, she just leaned into it and went, "Give me the ugly, right? Give me all of the ugly," and so they did it, and we replicated that look. I'd say extremely well,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, now I just need to wait a while for my beard to grow back. For me, basically, to cut it again because I'm going to go as Colin Robinson again this Halloween.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I've already got that one. The costume's already done.
Hmm.
Corduroy pants I've got a great cardigan, beige clothes top to bottom. Um,
Yeah.
but speaking of Colin Robinson, I don't know if you've been watching this season of What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah, yeah. I haven't. I'm not caught up with the most recent version, but
Yeah.
one episode that is. But no, but yeah, I haven't watched it.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. Season 4 has not been my favorite.
Oh, okay.
Not really
Oh,
digging it. I really don't like the baby Colin Robinson storyline.
oh. See, it's funny. I actually liked it. I actually find it kind of funny and chaotic and just slapstick funny.
Mm-hmm.
I thought this kind of. I've enjoyed it, but yeah. What don't you like about it? You miss his lines and stuff
I
like
just
that. Isn't
yeah,
that dope?
I just miss the old Colin Robinson. I also am not a huge fan of the Nadja. I'm not a fan of any of the storylines this season. Is the
Mm-hmm.
thing. Well, I like Guillermo's, but it's not funny. It's like romantic, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of a. And I'm not didn't really. I don't really want to watch romance and What We Do in the Shadows, but I don't
Mm-hmm.
particularly find Nadja's nightclub storyline particularly interesting. And honestly, I like Nandor's character way less as a result of this season. The whole genie storyline and how he's abusing the genie's wishes and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't like it. I don't like the wife character. I liked Nandor, and it's just kind of turning him into a real unlikable sleazebag this entire season. I mean, he's always been kind of crappy to Guillermo, but in sort of a naive, I'm from the old world, and when I realize I've made a mistake, but just
accidentally sort of, accidentally apologize, sort of.
yeah, exactly. I mean, in his own warlord kind of way, but the aggressive way that he's been mean to everyone around him, including the wife he wished back into life. I don't know. They've turned him into a deeply unlikable character to me, and that's a shame, right? And again, Guillermo's story is good, but it's not funny. It's sweet and romantic, and it's like I want to watch a mockumentary, not a rom-com here, right? And then it ends up tragic for Guillermo, because it always ends up tragic for Guillermo, and it's frustrating that they sort of dropped the he's the they haven't dropped it, but they haven't really spent any time with it. The whole fact that he's a descendant of Van Helsing. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen like 2 seasons worth of or 3 seasons worth of television before this, but
sure.
So I've been really disappointed with this season, if I'm being totally candid. And I know that's heresy, and there are probably people with forks and torches out in front of my apartment right now, but it's true.
All right, well, let's continue this. I'm gonna.
Yeah, when did you get your setup going?
Let's see here. Just one, sure. All right, I'm just double checking here. You see my screen?
All looks well to me. The bar is at the bottom of the screen instead of the top now. I don't know how I.
Yeah, I don't know if you briefly in my video feed. I have changed locations. On location for doing animation now. Moved my rig over to my main mothership area for doing stuff these days. So I'm giving that a shot. And because of that, I have 2 screens. I have 2 monitors, and that's why you'll see my eye line going back and forth a little bit.
Okay. Well, I mean, I do the same thing. I've got a 2 monitor setup, so now we're just looking in opposite directions, right? Now it's almost choreographed.
Yeah, but my camera's right here, so that hasn't changed too much from my original setup. But yeah, so I moved it down to have the bar down below, because now I can just it just makes more sense for me to have it down below versus on a margin left or right side. So all good. But as far as what I'm working on tonight, we kind of talked about this last week or maybe the week before, but I'm going to work on Clem's mouse pack this week, so we kind of hang out a little bit. So that's going to be the goal. Okay. And I'll probably just go into his master library and I'll do it from here, I guess. But yeah. Now, let's see. How many poses we got here? We have just this one pose. So I'm going to add a few more poses for him to say, like the ooh sound with teeth, and maybe add the tongue for saying the L sound effect, phony. But that's going to be my goal tonight. But as we talk about what they do in the shadows, I'll say, well, okay, one thing, clear me up on this. Guillermo had a love interest story. Was it with Nandor?
Well, it's not just that. Well, yeah. I mean, there was always this will they, won't they with them. I mean, the way that season 3 ended, when Laszlo pushed Guillermo into the coffin because he selfishly wanted Guillermo to watch out for Nadia while they were in Europe. Nandor was heartbroken that Guillermo didn't show up, right? And then Guillermo comes back, and I thought there was going to be this sort of love triangle-y thing. You haven't seen the most recent episode, I guess?
No.
Okay. I don't want to like spoil it too much, but the episode, the latest episode, it was actually almost beyond the pale for me. It was so mean, and it hurt Guillermo so much that I was like, I don't like you at all anymore. Like, I really don't know how they redeem the character after kind of what they've put him through at this point.
Huh. Okay.
Or what he's put Guillermo through, rather.
Okay, that's like this whole time. I mean, I always kind of pretty much figured he had a crush on Nandor, and that was about it. And Nandor's oblivious and doesn't know about anything. He's not really capable of loving anyone, or anybody. Looking at his brutal history, so I just never had any. I didn't even think about. Yeah, I didn't even think about that as a love angle at all. So maybe something in this most recent episode kind of throws it into that. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's. But to me, that's kind of like, oh, yeah, like I said, like you and I are talking about it, and that maybe that speaks to how badly maybe I'm oblivious, and that's very possible. I don't see a lot of things right in front of me that are obvious, but to me, that wasn't obvious enough for me to know that there was some sort of pursuant love interest versus Guillermo just wanted to become a vampire, wanting to get, wanting Nandor to just finally do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's always kind of, I always thought that was the primary objective versus love.
Mm.
I mean, I thought he did everything out of love over time because of his primary need of wanting to become a vampire. It doesn't make sense.
I guess for me, it in the first season, it very much was kind of that. But starting in about the second season, it started shifting because they needed it to, right? Because it was going to be a series. It was going to get old real fast if Guillermo never grew or changed, and he just spent. I mean, it's fine for Nandor, Nadja, and Laszlo to be largely unchanged. I mean, they've been alive for so many hundreds of years. But Guillermo as a human is still in a position where he should change, and I think the audience expects it. So that's why they added the Van Helsing storyline, and that's when they changed the nature of Guillermo's relationship with Nandor, where it was much. Yeah, he still wants to be a vampire, but now he wants to be a vampire so he can be with Nandor forever, right? And so.
Oh, see, yeah, that's all new. That's new to me. But like, did they kind of touch on that in other episodes, or did they touch on this most recent episode?
I don't know that it. I mean, this season it's very made explicitly clear, in my opinion, especially with this current episode. At least in terms of Nandor's feelings for Guillermo, because everything he does in this episode is done out of spite because he's jealous that Guillermo appears to be moving on from him, right? But yeah, I mean and maybe I'm reading into it too much, but that was always in my mind. The subtext was very quickly. It was less about Guillermo just being a vampire and more about him wanting to be a vampire so he could stay and be with Nandor. Right?
I mean, when I watch this next episode, I mean, I'll definitely kind of watch it with that kind of in mind a little bit, because I can kind of see why they would have. See, to me, it makes more sense. That actually makes more sense to me as to why Nandor even has a storyline with getting married and having a wife and stuff, because now it causes tension between two potential love interests. But again, I never even saw that. I never even that didn't click for me at all until you and I were talking about it. So
again, I could be reading into it too much for sure,
Yeah, I almost it's kind of funny. I almost hope that you're right, because that to me adds another layer to that storyline, because I'm in agreement with the Nandor storyline. I thought it was kind of boring so far this season, with him getting married and deciding what furniture to buy for the loft or whatever episode that was, and all that kind of stuff. I thought that his wife was kind of one-dimensional, and it's it's just kind of, it's more the fault of the writing. They could have done something really interesting with introducing a new character in, like, because they did a great job with what's the council girl, the actress.
You put me on the spot, and it goes out of my.
Because you're great at these.
I know
actress names, so I was hoping you would roll in with that.
No, I know it. She's in Bob's Burgers and Flight of the Conchord. Kristen Schaal. Jesus, I don't know why it took me so long to get there.
Yeah. Did she start as a comedian, or like was she on a comedian?
I actually don't know. Show? I don't know her backstory. I don't know if she how much stand-up comedy she did, or if she was came from an improv background or a writing background. I don't know.
She did, but again, Anyway, but like when they kind of started introducing her as a character, I think she's a really fun character to have around on the show. And I thought they would do the same thing with his wife, but his wife character's been just flat.
The worst part is that's by design, right? Like.
Yeah.
Nandor wishes that she just likes everything he says, and so the gag is be careful what you wish for, because you might just get it, right? And and I don't know. It's not, the season hasn't clicked with me. Pure and simple.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, there is a show, I think we may have touched on it before, on HBO Max called Wellington Paranormal, which is in and of itself also a spin-off of What We Do in the Shadows. This most recent season, because it's on season 4 as well, is great.
Really?
Best season.
Man,
Best season so far. I mean, just excellent.
Wow. I was so bored with the first. I gave it like 3 episodes of these two cops running around taking care of, doing their X-Files kind of thing. It just didn't click for me, and I gave up. I mean, I like the actors. I even like the chief. I thought he was funny too.
Oh yeah, Sergeant Maka is great. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just something about it. Just it never hooked me to maybe wanting to watch more. But maybe I'll go back. I mean, do you remember the first season at all?
Oh yeah. I've watched the whole thing all the way through.
Were you into it from the very beginning? Like you were hook, line, and sinker. You're like, yeah, this is it. I mean, kind of a show, or
no? I mean, I agree with you. The first season was kind of finding its feet a lot.
Okay.
And they starting in the second season, they start finding their character voices much better. The guy who plays Sergeant Maka he's great right from the start. But they start getting a little bit more interesting with the storylines, I think, is a lot of it too. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I think that the other thing too is as the seasons go on, the paranormal aspects of the show start getting more and more interesting. And additionally, it gets to the point where they're doing callbacks to previous episodes. So there's like sequels to previous episodes, which are really fun. And just in general, the storytelling has just gotten a lot better from season 1. I think that they're doing a much better job with their improv. I think that the parts that are clearly scripted are stronger. The narratives tend to be a little bit better. I mean, like they've got the character Satan, rather, who has shown up a couple of times in the show, and both of the episodes where Satan shows up are hysterical. I mean, they're an absolute riot. And a lot of it has to do with the guy who plays Satan, but it's still it's how they deal with him, and how just completely non-threatened by him they are. He's just sort of a nuisance character, a nuisance person. They're like, oh, Satan, why are you doing this again?
They actually address him as that too.
Oh yeah, they just call him Satan. Yeah, it's okay. The thing that I love about it is they very quickly abandoned this notion that they're kind of doing something that's clandestine, right? By this point in the show, everybody knows that Wellington is just one of the most haunted places on the world. Why? No one knows. It just is. I mean, we know the reason why is because it's a TV series that takes place in Wellington, and all these antics have to occur. But it's the people, or the world that everybody exists in is so accepting of the bizarre reality that Wellington exists within that no one even bats an eye anymore. It's sort of like, why would anybody continue to live in Gotham City?
Yeah.
It's sort of the same boat. Like, why are people still living here? I don't know. Why not? And so there's no weirdness. There's no cover up. It just is what it is. And I think that is also one of the reasons why it's gotten funnier and funnier, because there's nothing is going on in the secret. They're just basically beat cops, but they're beat cops that are fighting ghosts and Satan on a weekly basis, right? And there's no like Jermaine Clement and Taika Waititi and all the original cast. They've not come back like they did in What We Do in the Shadows. But I don't know if you remember much about the original film, but there was that one. Okay. Yeah.
I'm gonna talk about the original film here for a second.
Okay.
I have a beef with Amazon. I rented the original film, What They Do in the Shadows, to kind of understand the origin of what the TV show was about. And Ethan and I were watching it. We got about 20 minutes in and we fell asleep. Said, okay, we'll watch this a little bit later. Well, nope. You only have literally one day Like
Yeah.
24 hours from the day you start that film to finish it all. And, it's just it's so annoying that they can't let you just rent it for a longer period of time. Like there's some sort of thing where I can't remember what the statute is, but it was like literally 24 hours and like that where yeah, that was it. Now, out of principle, I won't rent it again because I'm just annoyed. I'm waiting for it to show up streaming, for one of these sites that I do pay for,
Mm-hmm.
in hopes I'll see it. Still, I only know 20 minutes about the original, what they do in the
Okay.
Shadows show. So
Okay, then you
I don't
wouldn't.
know.
You probably wouldn't recognize the cameo from one of the characters from the film.
Okay, all right. Well, that's a bummer, but
Well, it's not it's not
um,
a huge deal.
yeah.
Well, actually, there's two cameos. You know who Reese Darby is, right?
Which one's that one?
Well, he played the you. He was in Flight of the Conchords. He played Murray in Flight of the Conchords. Um,
Um, I didn't watch enough Flight of the Concords to know which episode. I mean, who? Yeah, I'm not a Flight of the Concords.
it's just like you don't care about New Zealand television and film at all.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah.
You're
Was he
one of
one?
these posers that watches Lord of the Rings and claims they know everything about New Zealand.
Oh, wait a second. I've never claimed that at all. Not knowing anything about New Zealand, I don't, and I'll say that again. It's just in case there was any confusion by anybody to say that I say I know everything about New Zealand, but I definitely don't. Although through my wife, I do have cousins in New Zealand.
Oh, that's cool.
So there's that, but no, I don't know anything about New Zealand.
A
So
million
yeah, I'm
years
completely
ago, yeah, a million years ago, I had a writing partner who was from New Zealand, and he told me a lot. I mean, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a really fascinating place.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, it does look like it looks beautiful too. On top of that, I mean, just
yeah,
everything you see from Lord of the Rings, for example. I mean, I think they shot a lot of it on location there, right?
yeah, yeah. Lord of the Rings was shot entirely, and The Hobbit, and I don't know if
Uh,
all of it was, but a lot of the new show, The Rings of Power, was shot down there too.
okay.
Which is that's a whole other conversation, but um, and for the record, I like the new show, although the amount of hate it's getting on the internet is just really unjustified. But
Really?
yeah, oh
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't know it was getting. It just came out like this weekend, right?
yeah, on Friday.
Jeez, and it's getting that much hate already within one
Well,
day.
it's just anti woke trolls, right? So
Oh, okay.
if you put a non white person in the show, people lose their freaking minds. It's so
Yeah.
dumb, right? Or if you retcon
Hmm.
Galadriel to be more of a warrior than just Celeborn's wife who moves to Lothlorien, well, damn you straight to hell, young man. It's all of these non grievances that a bunch of disaffected people who feel like they're losing power over their world. You know what I'm saying?
What's kind of yeah what's kind of weird is like is there even any source material? Like there's nothing that Tolkien wrote about these
Well,
pre
that's
Hobbit
the
stuff,
thing,
right?
right? Like, it's challenging because they don't actually have the rights to the Silmarillion, but most of what they are making the show about is takes place in the Silmarillion. My understanding is what they have
Okay.
is they have the rights to the appendices of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. And in the
Okay.
appendices of those two books, there is enough detail about, Celebrimbor, forging the Rings of Power, Galadriel, she spends time moving around Middle Earth during the Second Age. There's a lot of things that they can talk about. The Second Age is about the Númenóreans, so they talk about Isildur and Elendil and all of those characters to a certain extent, but they don't have the rights to go super into detail on some of this stuff just because anything that is in the Silmarillion only and not discussed in the appendices they can't talk about.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're not mentioning things like the Varda or Iluvatar or anything like that because
Mhm.
those deity figures weren't in, if my memory serves, it's been a long time, in the appendices, so they're not really coming up. They show the two trees of Valinor, and they show them being burned by Morgoth, and they talk about the Silmarils and things of that nature. But all that stuff, is glossed over very quickly because they don't have a lot of rights to it. So, but it's not like they spent a lot of time. It's not like J.R.R. Tolkien spent a huge amount of time on Galadriel in the Silmarillion. He talks about how, she came to Middle Earth for the same reasons a lot of the elves did. She decided she didn't want to go to war against Morgoth and sort of did instead of battling, she traveled north to the ice wastes of Middle Earth to try to find allies in these mountain people that lived up there at the time. Then, after she was pardoned for, I guess, basically going AWOL, they were going to send her back to Valinor, and she decided not to go, and then met Celeborn, her husband, and then they proceeded to move around, highly respected elves, move around Middle Earth until they settled in what became Lothlorien, and then that's where they spent the rest of their days until, going west again. Oh my god, I feel just so nerdy right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're going beyond what it's way over my head as to even where you're at. But
Yeah.
I trust you on this one.
But, he doesn't, Tolkien doesn't say yes or no that she, in fact, he says that she was a warrior and could compete with any of her male contemporaries. And Galadriel actually, I think, means like warrior maiden or something. So there's, there's a lot of reason to believe that she was a heck of a good fighter, right?
Okay.
And so all that they're doing is they're taking that idea and going, well, we're going to give her something to do then, right? Rather than just get married to Celeborn and settle down, we're going to give her something to do during the Second Age, right? And so they're all up in arms about that, and they're up in arms because hobbits didn't show up until the Third Age, but there's these things called Harfoots that are in the show, which are clearly just hobbits. So they're upset about that, and they're upset about one of the elves is black, and like Tolkien was really explicit that all elves have, golden skin or whatever. I don't remember what the exact description is, and I'm like, really, who cares? I mean, who honestly, cares? Please tell me who cares, right?
Yeah.
I mean, other than you. So yeah, it's just all of these tiny little things that they did to make a TV show good, and it's just, they're just being internet trolls. I mean, what else? They're internet trolls. What are you gonna do?
Which trolls are featured in Lord of the Rings, right?
They are featured, yeah. No, so you think that they would be a huge fan of it?
Yeah, they're playing to they're maybe they're just cosplaying, through the internet. That's very true. Yeah, that's pretty lame. I mean, it's kind of funny because I totally get when nerds are trying to fight over a canon, and even that's kind of even flimsy now because I don't mind when artists reinterpret the medium from a written medium to a screen medium now these days. I think it's kind of fun to see it reinterpreted a few different ways to see, do a different spin on stuff, and then you can have the argument over what's canon. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I'm more biased towards the written word being canon. If it was published first, that's canon. Like for comic books, for example, and you're watching Marvel movies, I always say the comics are canon, not the films. But whatever, I still enjoy them. I still find them fun. I like the different spin on stuff. So it's just sad when people can't just relax and enjoy the medium for what it is, and then just go on with their life, because it's not that big of a deal.
Well, there's no suffering in this country anymore.
Yeah, I guess not.
So people have to suffer about something. It's become TV. It's become their cultural.
New,
yeah.
There
is suffering in this country. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah. But that's not something to be. Yeah. There's a lot more things to be stressed out about than that. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, you and I, we grumpify, we yell clouds a lot, but that's not like. I don't think we lose any sleep over anything. We're just doing our own grumpy man critique about stuff, as we just talked about. What you talked about what they do with the Shadows. I'm still on the fence as to how much I hate that season, but I'm actually we should. I do want to talk about this Lord of the Rings, but I also want to go back to what they do with the Shadows.
Yeah. I totally derailed us by citing reference material from.
Just put a bookmark on the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in
for a second. Yeah, because for me, I actually wanted to jump ship last season. I thought last season was so boring. So when they came back
Mm,
to this season and they introduced like I was going like, what are they like? Do they even know what they're doing with Colin Robinson? He's a baby now, and now we're watching him grow up literally every episode. So I think it's pretty obvious to me what they're doing, which is he's just going to grow up to be himself again. Now we're doing is watching him, watching him grow up and do all this mean things that Laszlo has to take care of as the surrogate father slash uncle.
mm-hmm.
And run
Mm-hmm.
around and do the stuff. I think it's kind of funny. I don't mind the nightclub. I think it's just funny the vampires want to run a nightclub and how terrible they are at it. I think that's kind of funny. I'm with you on the Nandor stuff. I think it is kind of boring. They've really relegated him to just being almost like a background set piece as he navigates the world of not wanting to be married. But I think leading up to it, and all those paintings of him with all of his wives, all that stuff was really funny.
Mm-hmm.
I and the genie stuff didn't. The genie stuff to me stayed just long enough for me to not get annoyed with it because it's no longer an issue now, at least as far as I know, unless this episode is something where he's really around that much.
I
Because
won't
he
say
spent the
anything.
wishes
I
so
won't say
quick.
anything. Just watch the episode.
Okay,
You'll
all right, all right.
understand.
Okay, all right. So if that's the case, so obviously I think that alludes to yes, they're at a point where they're beating a dead horse because the wish thing comes back. Because I thought they kind of spent it and it was good and it's moved on, but now he's dealing with the repercussions. But yeah, so I am with you on the Nandor thing. Guillermo thing was completely. I don't know what's going on with his character at all. I liked having his family over for
Mm-hmm.
dinner. I thought that was a really fun episode. And then they just go into bloodlust when they see when they deal with vampires. See, I mean, even now just talking about it makes me laugh out loud. Just the whole shtick of that. But I like this season better than last season, so it's kind of weird because I think you and I flip flop a little bit. Because last season I was worried about the show, but maybe it's almost just from what we're talking about. Maybe it's time. Maybe it has run its course, and you can't do much else with it. I don't know. Anyway, so I want to throw that in there at you while we're talking about sort of was talking about that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that this?
I
Are
don't
we
know.
on the season finale of this show, or is it still a couple episodes
There's at
left?
least one more episode listed on
Okay.
Hulu. I don't know if that is the last one or not, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Um, yeah. Um, as far as the Lord of the Rings thing, I wasn't sure if I was going to watch it because now going back. Now let's take the pin back on the Lord of the Rings stuff.
Okay.
Like the Hobbit stuff. Now, see, here's the thing that I had an issue with the Hobbit because this is where I am going to be an angry nerd type, But I love the Hobbit book, but I felt like when they turned it into three movie trilogy, 3 hours long each kind of a thing, I just thought this is such a lame cash grab, and Peter Jackson has no authority to completely turn the Hobbit into some sort of sweeping epic that lasts forever and ever and ever. I didn't even bother watching the last of the trilogy. I was so bored with the Hobbit. It had lost all of its charm for me. It wasn't nothing like Lord of the Rings for me. Lord of the Rings was great, but the Hobbit, I was kind of done with it. Like now, I just don't care about anything with the branding of Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit. I'm not going to watch it
Mm-hmm.
more likely than not, unless it's highly recommended from other people around. But, if you're telling me it's amazing, maybe I might give it more of a chance. But I'm still waiting for other people to kind of filter and tell me if it's worth watching. But I don't know. Um, Despite all the internet trolls, what was your take though? You enjoyed it?
I enjoyed it. I mean, it could go pear shaped. There's no question about it. But I dug the first two episodes. I mean, I did, yeah. And
Okay.
um, it's still very much setting up all of the characters. They haven't even gotten to Numenor yet. So, like, half the cast hasn't even uh, come into the show. Only the first two episodes have been released.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I like the first two episodes so far. Right? Again, that doesn't mean that the whole series is going to be great, but yeah, as a starting point, yeah, I'm invested right now.
Huh.
And the
Okay.
thing is that the Silmarillion is pretty vague on a lot of the stuff that occurs during the Second Age. I mean, it spends a lot more time in my memory. I mean, I haven't read the Silmarillion in, God, 10 years, maybe more.
I didn't even know it existed until tonight. So,
It's kind of like the Middle Earth Bible to a certain
okay.
extent.
All
There's,
right.
it spends a lot of time talking about Iluvatar, which is the god of Middle Earth. creating his Varda, which are angels, archangels, basically, and then from that the Maiar created, and Gandalf is a Maiar, Sauron is a Maiar, and that kind of thing. And just sort of the elves he put on this plane called Valinor, and one of the Varda, Melkor, turned heel and became the villain and renamed himself Morgoth, and steal the Silmarils, which are these gems forged by the great elf craftsman Fëanor, and then they leave Valinor to go to Middle Earth to fight Morgoth and recover the Silmarils.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all these different ages. There's the years of the trees, the first age, the second age, the third age, right? And the Silmarillion focuses mostly on the year of trees, the first age, and the second age, right?
Okay.
But the second age is something like 3,500 years long, something close to that, and so he doesn't really go into the day-to-day minutia of how the Númenóreans lived and what the full story of Ar-Pharazôn was, and how he was the last corrupt king of Númenor before it fell, and all that crazy jazz, right? He touches on it briefly, so there's a lot of wiggle room. There's a lot of slack to play with that hardcore fans are really getting up in arms about, and frankly, I don't think that there's any justification for it. I mean, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
So.
Are there? Do they get a chance? I mean, is there a lot of setup for these first two episodes, or do you get a chance to see some action, stuff like that? Where, because for me, that's the ultimate thing: is does it appeal to my short attention span? Because I'm pretty much a child when I watch television.
It opens with an action sequence, but then it's mostly talking heads for the first two episodes.
Okay.
It's Galadriel coming back from the north and seeing Lyndon and Gil-galad and her relationship with Elrond. Which, they're retconning all of that, right? I mean, Elrond is a much younger elf than Galadriel is, but he is basically her age. I mean,
wow.
Elrond ultimately ends up marrying, in the actual books, Galadriel's daughter, right? So that's how much younger than he is. So they've changed the ages of them completely.
Okay.
They've taken a character who was only vaguely referenced in the Silmarillion and turned him into a protagonist in, I think it was Durin the Fourth, who was one of the last kings of Khazad-dûm before they awakened the Balrog and started the war for Khazad-dûm, and ultimately that became Moria, yada yada yada. But so we were mostly just meeting characters in the first two episodes. The thing that I'm invested in is the whole Rings of Power aspect of it. Given that ultimately the whole story is about how Sauron returns to Middle Earth in the guise of Anatar, and shows Celebrimbor, an elf, a craftsman who is a descendant of Fëanor, how to craft these magical rings, which then he uses. Everybody's seen the prologue to the Fellowship of the Ring at this point. I don't have to retell that story, but that's what a bulk of the series is about: is the fall of, or the rise of the power of Sauron, right? And I think that it's supposed to basically end. They're talking like 5 seasons or something. That's what they want to do. Whether or not that they'll actually get that many, it's unclear right now. But if they do get the full run that they've sort of pitched it on, it'll basically dovetail right into the beginning of the Fellowship of the Rings, with the War of the Last Alliance and Men and Elves finally defeating Sauron, right, and Isildur inheriting the One Ring. Okay. But yeah, that was a lot of words that don't mean anything unless you have some context for a lot of very esoteric, relatively esoteric tomes.
Wow, I mean, because none of that's going to be. I had none of that going into the show. I mean, I appreciate it, but even then, even with us talking about it, I don't know if I'll retain a lot of that going in. The key word I heard was Sauron.
Right, that's the thing, right? Like, we're getting into the annals of Lord of the Rings mythology at this point. This is the stuff that only the hardcore nerds give a crap about. Which is why I think the show is in this weird liminal space that may not pay off for it. Because I don't know that the world is really asking for another Game of Thrones. Like, it's not even clear that House of the Dragon is going to be a hit, right?
I mean...
Now, admittedly, there's a lot of spoiled goodwill there, and I think Amazon is banking on that fandom looking for a place to go. But I don't know that they're going to find it in sort of the general population, because I think the general population is aware that the Lord of the Rings exists and that the Hobbit movies existed, and maybe they were casual fans of it, but do they really want to have another show about it? I don't know, you know. And they're definitely not doing themselves any favors by deviating from canon, in as much as the hardcore nerds are concerned. So it's unclear to me that it's really going to find an audience, because it might just be caught in this almost Schrodinger-like space where it is neither a success nor a failure, because it can't find a broad enough audience to hook it. It can't grab enough of the hardcore fans because they're breaking the canon so much, but it's not unique enough or different enough to get the, for lack of a better word, Game of Thrones crowd to buy into it. And
you know what though, like back when Lord of the Rings was out, when it was released in film, I mean, a lot of what I would call, we could call casual people, casuals or filthy casuals.
Normies is my preferred term. Yeah.
Normies is good. I mean, they latched on because it's a much more digestible medium to just sit there and passively watch it versus having to read it. I think a lot of people came in out of everywhere to enjoy it, and they latched on because the story is so good. I think as long as the story is good and word of mouth gets out about this new iteration of it or this new attachment, to the mythology, I think it might be okay. But if it's just inundated with a lot of talking heads, like you're saying, like I don't know, the story has to be going enough, and if they keep it simple enough, maybe it'll be okay. I mean, because I think nerds, like for example, Marvel, same thing. Like we loved our comic books growing up, and then of course we flocked to the theater to watch any iteration of a comic book on the big screen. But then Normies also came along too, because it was a movie on top of that, and then all of a sudden it just grew. And now we see the juggernaut that Marvel is because of they kept the story, as much as you and I can critique the stories, they were pretty easy to digest. They're nothing's too sophisticated. There's just enough of a through line to keep everything kind of tied together. It's always chasing one thing. Every movie's pretty much chase one thing, explanation of the origin of their powers, and then chasing that one thing that needs to help save the world somehow, or save the hero's life somehow, or the hero's loved one somehow, and then fight the villain at the end that has the thing. I mean, that's kind of, it feels like, and I'm being very oversimplified with it, but that's kind of the gist of almost every one of the Marvel movies, right? I mean, I'm trying to think here. I mean, I don't know.
I think, I think that you're right, and I think that that's also a part of the problem with the Rings of Power, is there isn't a central conflict. I mean, ultimately, the Lord of the Rings is about a war, right? It's about a war, and the one way to end the war, it's
it's go to the hell pit, lava pits, and drop your ring off. That's
right.
all you need to know.
Right, and it's everybody else fighting this war it's just a stalling tactic, right? So it's filled with
Exactly.
I'm sorry. Zoom is doing its thing. Go ahead and finish what you're saying.
I was just gonna say, like, that one, the main core story loop, right? Which is, let's get to the lava pits and drop off this evil ring. It's terrible. And then what you do, I mean, the genius of that, I think it was they had the right amount of ingredients for everything else, because then you're able to talk about the characters on the journey on the way, but the main through line never changes. You always have the lighthouse to go to as you're watching. Oh, I like this character because I gravitate towards this character because it's an emo character, or it's a really happy-go-lucky character. What's going to happen to this character as you go through the journey to do this one task? You keep your chores to one task, you're going to be good. But if you deviate or you spend so much time explaining the origin of a chore and then you don't get to the chore at all, you don't even know you have a chore to do until 3 or 4 episodes into a TV show, I think it's a recipe for really bland, not very good food.
Yeah.
I'm using all kinds of metaphors.
You need to, yeah. You're just all over the place with the metaphors tonight. That's
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
my job. I agree with you
I feel like
100%.
we're underrepresented on that, so I wanted to help.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. I agree with you completely, and I think that is the biggest risk of the show. Because the thing is the compelling part of it is the story of Celebrimbor and him being duped by Sauron into creating and giving him all of this power, leading into the last war of the Second Age, right? There is, you know, the truth is that Elrond and Galadriel during the Second Age aren't doing as much as humans are, right? It's the first age of humanity. It's the first age where all, you know, we're dwarves, humans, and elves are all finally there and active, right? And then the third age is the closing of that old generation. And then the fourth age is obviously the age of man. But you know, there's a lot of compelling stuff that happens, but it's unclear to me how hamstrung the showrunners are because they only have limited access to the source material. And it will force their hand. They will have to change the storyline for legal reasons, for rights reasons. But, you know, the show is called The Rings of Power, so the real focal point should be on that. And it's unclear to me that will be the focal point, and almost to the point that it's a misnomer, right? I mean, Celebrimbor doesn't even show up until the second episode, right? And this is the craftsman that is duped by Sauron into forging the rings in the first place, and he's not even in the first episode.
Oh, jeez.
So, you know, it's right, and they added hobbits for, if I had to guess, because hobbits are expected now to movie fans of the Lord of the Rings, but there was no reason to add them, and there's two entire storylines that are just completely made up, that are not in the source material at all, and it's the Harfoots storyline and this strange comet that a giant crash lands into Earth, and a couple of these Harfoots find him. And then there's this other story about these star-crossed lovers. One's an elf and one's a human. And it takes place in the Southern Lands, which are never talked about, for the most part. You're right? And so both of those are completely original, have nothing to do with the source material. And, you know, it remains to be seen whether these original creations are as compelling as the stuff that's based on Tolkien's work. And how it will play out. I mean, there's a huge amount of risk for this show. All I can say is that I like the first 2 episodes, right? It could go completely off the rails in the third episode.
All right. Well, the internet trolls sounds like they're just trolling and critiquing very superficial kind of stuff so far. What the show sounds like, especially when you hear the word woke, or, you know, if they're.
I mean, that's what they're invoking. I mean, that's not. I don't think that it is. I think. Yeah. You know, it is. Yeah. It's whatever, but you know, fans are gonna do what fans are gonna do.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I'll definitely, you know, at some point watch the next episode of What They Do in the Shadows, and let me see if I'm just curious. I am gonna definitely watch it with different. Just, you know, I'm gonna kind of bounce back and forth between like how you interpreted it and like how I non-interpreted it. I didn't see anything like that at all until you said something. To me, it adds a different layer. Actually, I'm more intrigued to watch it now. I was always gonna watch it anyway because I like the show so much. But so maybe we'll talk about the next week as a follow-up. You know, so I know we're kind of bumping up on time here a little bit. Well, I mean, not like we have any. Like, we can go for on forever, but I think now's a good place to wrap up, at least for this week. But,
okay, works for me. Let's take a quick look at this new mouth pack for Clem.
Yeah, so he's all done now. He's all good to go.
Nice.
If you watched during our stream, I used Calamity's mouth pack as my guide to kind of know like what the mouth positions are I needed. So Clem does have a pretty extensive mouth pack. He's equivalent to Calamity except for the fact that he doesn't have a smiling mouth pack, which I don't know if he ever, consulting the writer of the Calamity Jane show, I don't know if he really smiles all that much.
No, he's not a smiler, that one.
He's not a smiler, so I think we're good for now. I mean, and if we need to have him smiling, well, I'll just make another set of frames for his mouth pack, and we'll get him smiling. But for all intents and purposes, he's pretty much wrapped up for this week. One thing I didn't get to today was I was going to do eye blinks for him, but that's that won't take too long, and by the time we're on next week, I'll have something else to work on anyway. But I'm going to put in some eye blinks for him. I just realized he needs to have that a little bit to add some life into his scenes. But yeah, we're in good shape for him this week. I would say success. Thumbs up.
Great.
Mr. Clem.
That's good. Great way to wrap up. As always, check out our Patreon site when you get a chance. It's calamityjane.rocks. It'll take you right there. Please consider joining us and helping make this show a reality. Additionally, you can find all of our streams. We archive them on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and watch everything else that we've worked on. We're on Facebook and Twitter. On Twitter, we do a 3-tweet story every week. We're going to probably wrap up the story next week. Actually, we're sort of got distracted with other life things, so we'll probably finish up that storyline next week. But otherwise, we're relatively consistent about that. But yeah, that's about it for me. James, any closing thoughts?
No closing thoughts. I'm completely, and this is normal, nothing's in my brain. I'm just completely a blank slate. I've done my mouth packs now. I'm just like off mode.
All right, sounds good.
Kind of sad. Yeah.
Sounds good. No. All right, well, we'll let you go then, and have a good night, everybody. Stay safe out there. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye, everybody.